Hi guys, I'm Fishman2114, and today we're going to begin the process of turning this old 5-gallon tank into a shrimp breeder tank. So really we can call this a tank restoration video because, I mean, as you can probably tell, this tank has seen better days. I know when I received it, it had a leak in one of the corners, and I mean, they tried to silicone some highlighted areas with it appears to be just a generic kitchen sealant, and apparently that didn't work. What I have done off camera, it should be hard by now.
That's what she said.
Is I have applied this Marine Land aquarium sealant all around the edges, mainly the corners. I tried to get underneath those corners, as that's where I suspect that the leakage occurred. That one I really got. I'm almost positive that's where it is. We will do a water test later on, but for the meantime, we are actually going to get this tank all ready up. The first thing we're going to do on camera is apply a black background. What we're going to do is paint the back of this with acrylic paint. It doesn't matter what kind of acrylic paint, as long as it's acrylic. I'm going to use black. I think black is just a really solid background. I know most fish keepers just do a black. It hides algae well. It makes fish pop. It makes them more colorful. Black is honestly just the best to use. Now, the first step we're going to do is clean the glass. You need to make sure that the glass is clean before you put the acrylic paint on. Then, after we paint, we will apply this acrylic sealer gloss finish spray. There's matte finish or gloss finish. It doesn't really matter which one, but what this does is it allows for the acrylic to actually stay on the tank. If you were to just paint the tank itself, it wouldn't really stick. And always make sure when you're painting the tank to apply some kind of tape around the edges to make sure that it only stays on the back. So I will do that real quick and I'll show you guys the update. So we are ready for painting now. I got some tape along the edges. We want to make sure that the paint does not get onto that side. And I have it on the other one, as well as I sprayed this. I just used water. You don't have to use anything fancy, but you just want to make sure that the glass is clean. And once you do that, you are really ready to start getting into painting. I am going to paint this off camera. Once again, I just have black acrylic paint, and I am going to use a 2-inch brush mostly. I will use a 1-inch, let's see if I can focus, a 1-inch brush for more along the edges, and really just avoid the black top and bottom if you can. But I'm just going to do that off camera, and I'll be back when we have it fully painted. The black background is fully dry and fully sealed at the moment. It is a couple days later. After I painted this, I let this sit overnight just to relatively dry, and then the next day I sprayed it with that acrylic seal that I showed previously, and I gave that another full day to dry. So I definitely probably took more time than I needed to dry it, but I'd rather take more time than leave it wet and have it too little time to dry. So it's honestly, it's beautiful. I've never actually painted a black background. There's a little scratch there, but other than that, the rest of it's very nice. But yeah, it really does beat out, let's say, taping a black background. I, on my previous ones, did black construction paper or black poster paper. It was just cheap and easiest to find, but the only downside with this is that once this is on, seeing that it's painted and furthermore sealed, it's on. So if you want to do this, make sure you want to do this, because once it's on, it's not coming off. But we are ready to get into our hardscape. So I will get the materials out and show you how we're going to be doing that. Getting into the hardscape, we have 2 pieces of spiderwood. I have cleaned and boiled all the materials, by the way. Make sure you do that before you put anything in the tank. So 2 pieces of spider wood, and then I got 5 larger rocks I got from the garden outside. Now also boiled these. You really want to make sure that the rocks are nice and clean. The ones I got were super muddy, so just make sure you do that before you put anything in your tank. You'll also need a pair of tweezers. Now, these are just general tweezers. I do have aquascape tweezers, but for the meantime, these are actually going to be pretty good, the smaller scale ones. Tissue, and then super glue. I like this Gorilla Micro Precise super glue, but just make sure that it's aquarium safe. There are certain super glues that are not aquarium safe, so just be sure to get an aquarium safe one. All right, I think I got the tank how I'd like it. Unfortunately, I don't think this driftwood really fit in. Now, I could have possibly cut it in half and maybe included half of it, but I do like how this piece looks, so I'm just going to save the entire thing for a future project. So we'll put that aside. And I also do have these smaller rocks. Once again, I cleaned and boiled them, and we're going to display them along the tank. Some of these will end up being glued, some of them will just be loose. So I'll put them, kind of scatter them across, see how I like them, see which ones I will end up gluing. All right, so this is what we're going to be working with at the moment. Obviously that rock right there won't be glued in, but really we're going to glue this in. I only used a couple of the larger of the smaller stones just to kind of fit everything in place. I even put one there, and we'll glue that together, so hopefully that'll be one cohesive thing, excuse me, and then we can start getting the substrate ready. But before we do that, we do want to leave this overnight. We want to make sure that this is fully secure before we do any more monkeying around in here. So I will show you how to glue this together right now. What you're going to want to do is wedge small pieces of tissue in between rock crevices, and just to kind of get everything glued together. So as you can see, I've used a very small piece of this overall tissue, and I've shoved it in there using my tweezers, and then all I'm going to do is soak it in the glue. You'll repeat the process until every crevice and every loose point is fully glued together. Make sure to really soak that glue, and really just don't be afraid to use, quote, too much glue, because I don't really think there is too much glue. So you really do want to use this tissue method, because just trying to glue rocks together is honestly a nightmare, and the tissue really just acts as an adhesive for the glue to form, and it really just works best sticking to those rocks. So we're going to do that at the moment, and I'll show you my progress. All right, it's the next day. I got tons of glued pieces together. That one's even glued on there. You got glue connecting this rock to the driftwood, this rock secured to the driftwood. These 3 rocks, I got them secured together. And then these little rocks up here, both of them are glued to that rock. And then those 2 rocks are glued together, and that rock is glued with the driftwood. And they are all glued together. They're kind of stuck to the base of the tank, which actually isn't a problem. But what we're going to do now is put our substrate in. I have a combination of white sand, gravel, and some of those other rocks that I showed off earlier. What you're going to want to do is try to apply an even mix. I'm going to dump it over here to start. I kind of want this to be a higher area of interest. So we're going to put about that much of the sand in, and a good chunk of gravel in as well. I'd say that's a good mix. I'll mix it up and I'll continue the process, and I'll show you the end result. And we're back. So I, for one, really am enjoying how this is turning out. This kind of wasn't my ideal scenario. I wasn't really thinking of kind of creating this in a drop-off, but what I've done is I've created this area much higher in elevation than this one. So to me, it's almost kind of turned into a drop-off, and topple that with all the rocky all the rocks that'll be there. I definitely put some of those smaller rocks around the focal points just to kind of make the transition to sand a little bit smoother. But once we put water in here, a lot of these small rocks that are covered in sand will be a lot clearer. I promise it will look a lot better once we get some water in here. Here we got the tank displayed with the light. It's not a crazy light. I do think I'll be getting a better light in the future, as it's just kind of a generic tank top. But for now, we got a light on the tank. Really what I wanted to show you is I went ahead and bought 7 different plants. We'll get these bad boys opened up and we'll give you a closer look. And then it's going to be planting and filling up with water. This is really where the fun's going to begin.
This is where the fun begins.
Got the pots off the plants and we are ready to put them in. I want to show you what I ended up getting. So these are 2 red flame swords. For those that like to look at the card, here's the little tag that comes with the plant. I have just a general Anubias. This one didn't come with a card, but it's just your standard Anubias, quite small. I might cut it in half. We'll see how it looks in there. So, I have 2 of these. They're not looking the greatest, but I didn't realize how sparse this one was at the store. But I got 2 of these. I'm not going to try to pronounce it. Hydrophila compact. We'll just call it that. I've actually never gotten these plants. I've never even really seen them before. So we're going to see how they do. And then I bought 2 of these Lutea. And one of them did have a little sprout, so I guess I have 3 of them. But these plants, these Lutea, are honestly some of my favorite. They can get kind of large. They can really get nice and full. And they're pretty easy to take care of. They're kind of like an Anubias, but in my opinion, they're a lot better. Before we put the plants in, I almost forgot, I want to put some root tabs in. This is just an Oppie product. I had 2 left, and I cut them into quarters. I'm just going to be putting them directly in the ground. Cover it up like so. Nothing too crazy. I'm going to put them in the spots where I know I'm going to have some plants, some of the larger ones. And these will just really help to establish roots, as the name suggests. But also, they work really well on just letting the plants have nice, healthy, full leaves. So, I think I'll put the last one down in there. Gonna bury that. This one's quite difficult to get to. There we go. And we'll chuck that out of the way. We'll get to these plants here. Now, when you're in the midst of planting, like so, you want to make sure that these plants are constantly moist. If they dry up, you're going to have some problems. So, always have a spray bottle on hand to spray. Now, I'm going to plant these, and we'll come back when they're all nice and planted, and we'll get some water in it, and that'll be all the progress I can make for today. All right, I filled it with water, and this is the end result so far. I quite enjoy it, but I would like to know what you guys think. Now, I did use a lot of water for my 30-gallon tank. I used about 2.5 gallons and 2 gallons of just regular tap water, just to kind of balance it out. But I wanted to get a lot of my pre-established beneficial bacteria in this tank because shrimp are very susceptible to change and they really do need very stable environment tanks. So I'm going to let this sit for a week, and I believe when I come back in a week, this tank should be ready for shrimp. I mean, I've used very well established water. It It looks great. It's nice and clear right now. A lot of these bubbles will go away. There's also a bit of sand up top and a little bit of debris, but overall I'm very happy.
In the next video, we are going to be getting some shrimp as well as doing some final touches, and I'll be giving you an update to see how their breeding progress is. So, I hope you've enjoyed this build as much as I have, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.